Hey, what's up, guys? Michael here for M3 Creative, and today we're continuing our Atlanta Film Production Group interview series. I have a pretty amazing guest with me. He's an extraordinary colorist. His name is Luke Bryant. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing, Mike?
Excellent, excellent. I understand you're coming off of an all-nighter.
Yeah.
You look tired, bro.
I'm very tired.
What time did your all-nighter start?
About 11, and then it ended at 7:50.
So you're just looking at colors for hours and hours. So let me start at the beginning though. How long have you been a colorist?
I've been working in color for about 6 years. It mainly got started when I was shooting my own stuff, and I was a DP for about 3 years, and yeah, like I had to be my own colorist, and eventually just fell in love with it. And
so it was kind of by default because you needed the colorist. So, but
Yeah.
then, so it wasn't something you necessarily had like, I'm going to go be a colorist. It was started from being a DP or just working on projects and kind of just finding your own lane doing color, right?
And I think knowing that was like such an underestimated part of the process.
Yeah, for sure. So almost you're a Davinci guy then.
Yeah.
So this is always an interesting conversation, at least here around the studio when we talk about coloring. And like for me, I've always been like the running gun. So I learned to edit from shooting my own stuff and then getting into my own coloring process. My biggest thing is always understanding the nodes versus layers.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm a Premiere Pro guy. That's just like how long ago I started. Premiere is what I started on, so it's kind of like by default you use what you're used to, right? So can you talk about nodes a little bit?
Yeah. The node, like, I guess like with like node structure and everything, basically like there's different types, but like the most common is a serial node, and that just means like it's kind of like in Baselight, and I think it kind of works this way in Premiere, where you're essentially layering on top
Right.
for the next node. So like you start at node 1, node 2 is going to be, that color information is going to be layered on top of 1. And then the cool thing about like layer mixing is when you add like a layer node, you're actually giving priority to the node below, because it's like, I don't know if you ever worked in Davinci with like
Negative, no.
Okay.
I've opened it and looked at it and I said, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, so like a serial node will be like linear, like side by side, and then once you start stacking layers, they'll go vertical. And so with layers, whatever's lowest, and you key out, say you want to key out a skin tone, you're gonna give priority to the one below it. And
so are you having to so like when you start coloring like skin tones or adjusting, are you using masking? Do you use masking tools in DaVinci, or is
every day?
Okay, so it's all, and in Resolve for that, is there, I know in Premiere it's like a keyframing process for your masks. Is it similar in DaVinci?
Yeah, I pretty much track every single mask. That way it stays locked onto the right color, right luminance, in the right space. And what's kind of like one of the surprising things I learned about like advancing my skills and like really trying to like work like all of the amazing artists that are out there, like the people at Company 3 or the Mill or whatever, you'd be amazed at how much of it is reinventing what the DP already had in mind. Because, for example, the first step is always a balance.
Right.
But if you have a window that, like, just like we were talking about earlier, like the whole fix it and post thing, like sometimes on set you don't have enough time to pull down that window as much as you need to. So I'll try and equate, the exposure of the room versus the light coming from outside of a window. But then once that's balanced, and once, white balance is set, and before I work in color,
so you're doing like a lot of color correction on the front end, is like
always, yeah, because you want the colors to react accurately,
right.
And that's especially important when you're working with like any type of like LUT or film print emulation, which I'm sure we can talk about later, but which that's a big part of how I work. But after you've done your balance, it's important to do what I call like local exposure, where you're taking, of course, like the subject, and I might mask that person out or the people, and like each of them have their different values, and you're recreating how the light would interact with the subject, and refining it to make it look realistic. And say like with that window, you have to bring it up, and you're really like adjusting like individual components of the image to make it like three-dimensional.
I got you.
Yeah.
So how much time are you spending on the masking and tracking part before you even dive into like just I guess
color. Prep
work?
Yeah, that's essentially what it is. It's like you're prepping the image, and that's actually most of the time, because typically the way I work is each scene is going to have a look, but the entire project is going to have a look science to it to make it unique, but also like coherent, know, and match. But yeah, most of it is going back and forth from like working with localized color and localized exposure, because once you have a balance, it's about tweaking the individual components of the image. Yeah.
So let me ask you this: so with are you using LUTs, or are you doing everything from scratch, or are you doing a combination? Like once you have your work prepped and you have everything pretty much like your white balance is even, everything's matching, whether you know if you're grading A cam, B cam, C cam, you have everything lined up, you're ready to give this project the vibe and feel.
Right. That's actually developed for me. Like the way I've learned to work is develop that with the director and DP as soon as possible. And if on set it can be used, great. That actually speeds up the process a lot, and it's something I'm working on perfecting remotely, working with dailies and such. But what was the question again?
No, I was like, do you grade everything from scratch, or are you
LUTs.
using LUTs or a combination?
Yeah. Okay, so I do make my own LUTs, and I've worked with other color scientists and colorists who are better than me to develop like film print emulation.
Okay.
And that's a big thing that I'm trying to get better at, is like I really love the look of film, and I would say that like as I develop my style, like that's something I really want to like hone in on, and like I've been inspired by companies like Cheat, The Mill, and of course like everybody's inspired, I think, in color by Company 3, but it's definitely like the look is definitely pays tribute to like the classic film look,
Right.
but also it's what's cool. Like I know.
Well, what program are you using to develop the LUTs? Or is it like, are you in Photoshop developing a LUT and you're bringing it into Davinci, or what is the process for creating your own?
My color scientists usually use like Nuke.
Okay.
And then they've used, I think there's a program called like Lattice.
Okay.
That will like allow you to like really like tweak LUTs to like a extreme like precision. And then honestly, Davinci sometimes it's like mixing and matching.
So sometimes you have like a hybrid, I guess you would call LUT, where you're mixing. It doesn't really necessarily exist. It's taking a combination or pieces from other ones.
Yeah, and LUT to me is different than like, I feel like when some people think of LUTs, they think of like it's the same as like look science, but I think LUTs are just a tool to like hone in on like that world that you're trying to like put the viewer into, and like for that scene, because each scene is going to have a different LUT, but it's not really a LUT. It's just me like dragging like the look of one scene over to another, but
and then having to make small minor adjustments to tweak it to fit that exact scene.
Yeah, because there's like two parts of the way I develop a look, and it's like with each project you're going to have a look science, which is like not going to change throughout the entire project. That's going to be on every single.
It's like your baseline
Yeah.
that's going to guide you through the entire
and it's
project.
at the end of the node structure. That way, because that's what everything's feeding into, and it's also
Gotcha.
it's also your output transform. Rec 709 is what we work with.
Have
today.
you tried to
Yeah.
color like in Premiere? Have you looked at their Lumetri?
Oh, yeah.
So how would you compare it to Davinci? Like, is it? I think the thing with Premiere is it's a little bit more user friendly, as opposed to like I think it's real easy to get intimidated by Davinci as soon as you open it if you've never been in it
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, I think Premiere has great tools. I've colored stuff on Premiere before because
Are you able to get as extensive as you do in DaVinci, or where are you kind of getting limited? Because I know it's not going to be as thorough as DaVinci.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think Premiere, like, if you know your tools, you can do amazing things in Premiere. I don't know my tools in Premiere as well as I do DaVinci, so I think the most important, I would just say, like, the benefit overall of DaVinci for me is, like, the OFX plugins that you can use with it. And then also, just tools that are designed for colorists and that have been designed based on, like, color timing in the old way we used to color correct films, like back in the old days.
Yeah, like Resolve it's built for coloring. That's like
Yeah.
its whole purpose was to color. So it's gonna be more intuitive. It's gonna have more of a streamlined process.
Absolutely.
What is I'm interested. How before the digital age? How were films colored? Well, first corrected and then graded. Pre-digital space.
So you have your negative, which think of it just like an Alexa sensor. Kodak stock. It's actually like basically just treat it the same way. Of course, it's developed. You have your negative, but that is not really even where the magic is. A lot of people, and I kind of fell into the belief that for a while as a cinematographer, like, I want to shoot film and only film because film is naturally beautiful, but that's not true. Like, film is a combination of your capture format and your print. And the magic of grading or color timing happens in between, where, today you look at a node structure and you have your output transform and you have your array log C at the beginning, and you grade in between log C and rec 709, and that's where the magic happens. The same thing was happening back in the day where you had a negative and you had, of course, the print at the other end that we're going to watch projected, but the inner positive in the middle where we're doing our color timing, it's the same exact process. So, like, all of these programs that we use today, I think there's a misconception that, like, digital and film are, like, so different, but they're really not.
Yeah, no, I think even too, like, when you look into editing software like Premiere, a lot of all the theory and the way it works comes from the original way that it was done. It's just now it's automated by having a computer do it. Like, coming from an editor standpoint, I don't think I would have been an editor pre-digital because I don't know if I would have had the patience to actually cut and link the film. But my question about, like, the old way when it comes to coloring, because were they able to, how were they going to mask certain sections to color certain, or that is something, a new control that colorists have that didn't exist pre-digital?
Yeah, that kind of came about. DI was becoming more and more popular and really changing the game in the early 2000s, but before that, to be quite honest with you, the DP was just, I wouldn't say the DP was better, but, like, the DP knew, like, they couldn't blow out that sky. They couldn't blow out that window.
So a lot of it was baked into what we call baked in look. Like, they were getting most of it in camera to have the least amount of stuff on the back end.
Yeah, and
because they weren't shooting log then, or what would ever been considered log.
Yeah, well, Kodak actually, and I didn't. If anybody wants to fact check me on this, Kodak has had such a impact on the way we work with digital. Like, they came out with Cine log, which is basically like the digital version of a negative.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also had they played a big role in OLED screens.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and apparently like this movement towards HDR, a lot of people view it as this like once we go HDR, like it's going to be better than film and this. But yeah, I think that's kind of the point. Like, and I think like these companies like Kodak are involved with like evolving our like displays to be able to, show these beautiful images and give them like the best display options that you could imagine. Like HDR is kind of like you're watching a print back in the 90s in a movie theater. Like we're getting more towards that amount of information that we once had in a theater, but now we're able to see it in our homes. And with companies kind of sticking their hands in these industries and ensuring like it's basically like we're trying to ensure the best cinematic experience can be viewed from wherever,
Right.
And that it gives the creators like not only the amount of control but like that vision that they had in mind fully of like yeah.
So what are you doing or what's the process for you to make sure that the look you're giving a project is consistent no matter what someone's viewing it on, whether it's on a 65-inch TV or they're looking at it on their phone streaming from YouTube or Facebook, and it's consistent across the board? Because I know I've seen just in my own personal experience where projects and it's something that was done incorrectly in the grading process where you're getting a different look based on where you're viewing something. So how does that what's done on your side to keep the consistent look?
Man, that's the hardest part. I'm like seriously working with clients who are not looking at things on a calibrated monitor. Mm-hmm. I've considered, and like this is something I'm gonna have to do very soon. Like I'm gonna be invested in some iPad Pros that the new iPad Pros have probably the top display like specs there are.
Really?
Oh my gosh, yeah, like they're
you're gonna use it as your
I'm gonna send it out to clients and have them view like our live grading sessions where like say I'm working remotely with somebody in LA, like they're getting an iPad from my company and they're able to watch what I'm doing live through just like different apps.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and so that's kind of like image insurance in a way.
Yeah.
But as far as like,
because I'm assuming what kind of you're working with a calibrated monitor in your studio, right?
Yeah, Flanders AM210, and then I have a 4K Retina display. I'm actually trying to sell that, but I'm bringing in like other like 4K monitors. Like I have my reference monitor, but then I have just like, because my AM210 is only 1080, but it's extremely color accurate. Mm-hmm. So that's I'm checking the color, but then I'm going back to other like 4K monitors and my OLED above me that's HDR. Like I'm looking at all these and I'm looking at different things, and I'm like, because like with my AM210, it's 8-bit. So there's some times where the color is accurate, but it's not going to show me as much detail as
you're not getting
4K.
all the color either with the 8-bit, right? So can you just talk for the people that are interested, just what is the difference in a calibrated monitor as opposed to like the TVs that we have or just our regular everyday computer monitors that maybe an editor would work on? What's the big difference? Because I know there's a huge price difference too. Calibrated monitors are not cheap.
No, but I would say it's consistency, 100%. Like there's never, unless I've done something wrong in the grade, and I've checked on the Flanders. By the way, in Flanders, they'll calibrate your monitor for free. If you have their products, they do all that for free.
Wow.
And they're here in Atlanta.
Oh wow, really? That's interesting.
Or Forsyth County somewhere. Yeah.
In Georgia.
Yeah, in Georgia. Like. It is, like I said, it is the most equivalent thing I can compare to like insurance in what I do, because if your monitors are calibrated, Rec 709, you're gonna get a Rec 709 image.
Can you kind of just I don't want to go down too deep of a rabbit hole, but can you kind of define what calibrated means when you're talking about a monitor? Like what's the actual thing going on inside the monitor?
Ooh.
I know that's a loaded one, right? That's a loaded question.
To be honest with you, I mean, it is checking. It's checking your RGB values. Like those are the big things. But other than that, I don't really know, and that's actually something I've been thinking about, actually, just like what exactly it's doing, because I've gone through the process.
Right.
I haven't seen Flanders do what they do, but like I've used like different calibrators, because like on my other monitors they're not Flanders, so I have to do them on my own. But like I only see the process running where it's like flashing different colors and it's like checking them.
Is it telling you if it's out of like if it's out of whack, I guess? Is it?
Yeah, and it's like fixing it too. So it's like,
oh wow,
yeah,
that's pretty intense.
Yeah, but they're not that expensive. Like I think like my calibrator was like 160 or something like that, and it was an X-Rite.
I went to, so a couple years ago, I went to Adobe Max when it was in San Diego, and I went to listen to a couple different colorists speak, and they had like, just kind of like those drop-in workshops. And I guess one of the guys that I listened to, like he had his monitor was like 10 grand, something insane. And then another thing that he spoke about was the lighting in the room.
Oh yeah.
How that plays, like there's this, like you guys should be in a certain color temperature room that's very neutral type thing before you get in there, just so your eyes are seeing true color on the screen.
Yeah, bias lighting is huge. That's actually something I'm really working on, to be honest with you. I'm working out of a living room right now, so I have like, I'm in the process of moving, but like I have like dark out shades, and then I have like lighting behind my screens, but like they've not been like they're not like spec lighting. That's something like the best thing to do is get the LED strips that like have been like made for that. Like,
so there's a specific, you can now get stuff that's going to be, so you personally, obviously, it's a process that you've grown into as a colorist, so you were probably at the beginning doing things terribly wrong as you were learning. So can you notice the difference from moving into a space that has the appropriate lighting in the room, the calibrated monitor? Can you notice the difference in your grade, like if you go back and look at something like 6 years ago?
Oh yeah, I've actually I sometimes work at the goat farm.
Oh, I love it. I used to be a the Atlanta Photography Guild. They had, I don't know if they still have their studios there, but I was like a partner studio person where before I had my own studio, where that's where I would shoot a lot.
Oh man, that's awesome. Yeah, I've just like from my home studio in my living room. There's such a difference when I go into an actual studio where it's like you don't have to worry about different factors. Like it's just all set up there for you. It's right. No comparison. I would almost rather like grade on like a calibrated MacBook Pro sometimes, just because like my response to everything, like my eyes are not as straining as much. Like there's light around you, but it's the right amount of light. Right. And it's not like killing your eyes and just like.
So does it go into even like what color the walls are painted to? Like it needs to.
Yeah, I would say so.
That's so in depth, and I know
this is perfect.
It's good and dark, right?
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: how early in the process? And I know, especially like if you're on an indie level, it's going to be different, and a lot of times certain things are bypassed just for budgetary restraints. So. Yeah. But in an ideal world, at what point would the colorist be brought in? Are you working with the DP and the production designer for the color palettes that are going on in the project, along with, so like maybe you're already developing that feel and the look that you're ultimately going to get into? Yeah. So is that the ideal scenario? And then what normally happens?
What normally happens is people want you to make magic happen at the end point,
Fix it in post.
fix it in post, and they have, and I had this happen recently. The DP gets a lookbook, and you get a lookbook, and sometimes they're completely different, which makes no sense to me.
And who's handing out these lookbooks?
Director and producer, and you know the producer wants to be happy, and they want to make sure it's marketable. Ideally, though, and what I've been really pushing the people I work with to do, come to me as early as possible. And I've been like, even like, I'll send out messages all the time, and I'll be like, hey, what are you working on? Because I might not end up working on that project, but if I can help that project develop a look for that DP, who, if they're a fan of it, some people don't like to monitor their stuff with LUTs. But I don't like to view LUTs as like, first of all, we never bake it into the image. You know, it's always going to come into post raw.
Right.
But
because then you can never get rid of it.
Then
if you bake it.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't change it. It is what it is.
Yeah. You can't change Superman's suit. You
know? Right.
But to go into it as if the way I like to look at it, going back to the whole film thing, I love the idea of creating digital negatives, because if a cinematographer knows their tools and they know how that negative is going to respond to light, it takes out the guessing game. Very similarly, the only difference now is, like, you know, obviously now we can view it in real time, but DPs back then were so good, like, they didn't need to.
Right.
But now that we're able to, it's, again, another form of insurance. Like, if we can develop a look and hone in on that, not only does it make set a completely different experience. You know, Roger Deakins, they use that same workflow to the point where it, and this is how I really like want it to be for me in the future. Like, when projects say they use me to develop the look science with a color scientist, we use it on set, and we use it in camera tests to, like, really make it right.
So essentially, colorists need to be in, like, I think when people hear the term colorist, they automatically associate it with post-production, when it really should be pre-production, production, and post. It should be something that you're involved with from start to finish.
That's what I want my company to, like, really hone in on, just because, like, that's the way the industry is going, and because then it kind of brings you back to the days of post is like, I can use printer lights more, and it's like, you know, I can kind of go about it in a more old-fashioned way, and there's something more clean and organic about that process where, like, you know, I'm looking at what they are looking at on set. Now I'm focused on the relighting. I'm not as much, like, I'm focused on, like, the small things that really
the fine details.
Out.
The bells and whistles that really make it polished at the end.
You got your push and pull, but then it's like, okay, you know, Mr. Deakins, like, what do we need to bring out of these skin tones, or, like, out of the shadows, and, you know, the tools of HDR now. It's like, what can we dig out?
Right, just to give it that little extra nudge, just to make it that much better. Like I was saying, like with new apps like Clubhouse, where there's a lot of hangout places, but it's usually more general, just to maybe filmmaking in general or videography in general. Is there hangout places for colorists, and places where you go to get whether it's resources, research, or just share general knowledge?
Clubhouse obviously is amazing, and I'm trying to open up some rooms, and I know actually some colorist rooms that are really good. They're just really small. Low Post, amazing resources. They have, you know, training.
Oh, really? Low Post, and is that like lowpost.com? Okay.
And you actually have, like, real colorists who devote their time to actually, like, teaching, even down to, like, their go-to node structure.
Wow.
Yeah, like Walter Volpato, I think that's how you say his name, colorist of so many beautiful films, like even Dunkirk by Christopher Nolan, laid out his entire process, and just everything, like anything you can imagine they have.
See, and I love when experts in the field do that? Because, you know, I think for a very long time, and I'm sure you've even experienced it, where a lot of professionals will sit on the knowledge because they feel like giving it is going to work them out of a job. But
Yeah.
what people don't realize is like I'll always share anything I can possibly share with somebody, because at the end of the day, someone's going to take that knowledge and just apply it differently. Like, you're not going to, regardless of what you learn from this industry expert, it's you're going to take a piece of it, but it's still going to become your own at some level, because you're not trying to necessarily duplicate or recreate someone's exact look. You're just trying to get a broader knowledge so you know how to manipulate it yourself.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because, and I won't mention any names, but there's a really popular YouTuber who focuses on color. And there's I don't want to be a whistleblower,
Right.
but there's something happening right now in our industry where people make money pretending they know a lot. And
I can get on a soapbox about this.
yes, and you find yourself where like these people are basically like portraying their success or that they're successful, but it's part of a gimmick to sell their courses to you.
Yeah, we have, it's a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah.
And I've actually, I don't want to say like trolled anyone's ads, but I'm like, you've never made a film. How are you selling
Right.
You've not made a short film, but you're teaching people how to be a filmmaker, or you're selling a course on filmmaking, and you've never made a film in your entire life. And weddings do not count as films. I don't care what you say.
I really like, I think that learning from people who are able to show you like, this is what I've done, and honestly to be able to learn from people where like you seek them out rather than them trying to bait you, like Walter Valpato, for example. Like, this guy's worked with Christopher Nolan. I think he has like, I think I'm gonna like,
Well, it's like you have like Shane Hubo's, he's got
the Film Academy.
he's got a bunch of stuff from it, and he shares all of his secret sauce from DPing and stuff like that. And I think like the people trying to sell courses, and they're not. To me, I don't know how you do that. You know what I mean? Because it's frustrating. And the other thing too, the other thing that I've seen like in those course ads and previews is that, you know, predominantly their course is being sold to indie filmmakers or beginning filmmakers, and the reality is they're presenting stuff in the perfect ideal world, as to where we know as indie filmmakers it's never going to be the perfect ideal world, because you're just trying to do what you can do with what you have. And it's like this, become a master filmmaker in 14 days. Come on, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Never. Dude, I've been doing it for 16. I'm not even close to a master.
And just specifically with color, be careful of anybody who tries to sell you a LUT pack. You know, it's like the best way to do LUTs is to create your own and mix and match.
Well, and here's the good thing. So, like, I do know where people, they'll do LUT packages, and they'll say, you know, they'll name it after particular movies, like it's this look. But the thing about LUTs is, like, depending upon how something was shot is going to vary how that LUT looks applied to the footage. So if you're not shooting it in the same realm, say like an Avengers movie, right? Like, you're not going to be able, you can create it and call it the Avengers LUT, but unless you're shooting the same color science and all those different things, it's not going to apply the same way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, am I far off?
No, you're completely right. There's so many factors that people don't consider, but the best thing I would, if people are serious about LUTs, find a color scientist. And they're a very strange breed, but they're out there.
They have to be. I think everybody in film at some level. If you're any part of the filmmaking process, you have to be of a unique and strange breed. Just because we look at life so much differently than everybody else.
Yeah.
So this is going to be like the big question that I know people want the answer to is, how on earth do you price projects? for a colorist?
I've I thought about doing it hourly because
Which is tough.
it's so
Incredibly tough, yeah.
And what I've had to adapt to is flat rates. And, you know, I would say that my rates are very fair based upon the skill set. And I
Right.
think that's important for a colorist because, and like time and skill set and honestly just like, yeah, like turnaround time is such a big thing. Like,
Right.
especially like, I've had hip hop videos. They're like, I need it in 2 days. You know, and like the
And you're getting it when the cut is locked, right? Like you don't.
sometimes no.
Oh
Yeah,
my God.
and that's when I've had to grow as a professional, and like contracts are so important. Like, you know, we're the film industry. We're a friendly community, but there's a lot of people in our industry that get taken advantage of.
But there's also a lot of people that try to take advantage as well.
And exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like don't allow yourself to to be put in that situation. But like my biggest thing is like I don't want to be looked at as like the contractor versus the client. I want us
Right.
both to be collaborators. And as far as like how I price things out, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of times I don't even go full rate a lot of the time because there will never be a project that is exactly like this is like
It's
the
going to be
equivalent.
it's going to be
It's
different every single time.
every single time.
And from me being or coming from directing music videos, I can only imagine on the post side for the especially in the urban hip hop world, it's a lot of last minute stuff.
Yeah.
So, do you have it? So, are your base rates going to be based on obviously the runtime of something? Like obviously
Runtime is
coloring a
huge.
music video
Yeah.
is different than a short film versus a feature.
Yeah, it comes down to a lot of conversations, just like number of shots. We have a creative discussion where we sit down over the phone, usually, or Zoom, and I like to know specifically what they want. References are always huge, like how far they're wanting to take the look, because my job, like I want to take what they want, but I don't want to just give them that. I want to give them something better.
Right.
So it's like have to take what they're saying, but also apply like, okay, but I know like I'm gonna put this much love into this image,
Right.
And it's gonna, realistically, every shot that I work on, and why I had to kind of stop doing hourly, it's usually gonna be about an hour a shot.
Wow.
Like in like realistically, it's usually about an hour a shot, and it's sometimes even more. Like I remember I've been hung up on a shot for 5 hours. I've had to walk away, and I've had
Come back to it.
Yeah, there's just there's those problem shots.
So, but the price too, is it gonna? So, say for example, in the perfect world where they bring you in pre-production and you start working with the director and the DP, you're going through production, and then everything's ideal to what you need going into post. Because at that point on the front end, you're really being compensated for your time and knowledge and expertise.
Yeah.
So the thing is like, how does, like in that scenario, how are you going to price it when it's just your time as opposed to the actual work itself? Because you're really just getting your project prepped for post.
When it's just what do you mean?
Well, so like if you're brought in as opposed to just doing the post work on it,
Right,
where
right,
you're
right.
just coloring, everything's done. You you don't know what you're really getting.
Yeah.
But as opposed to starting at the front end and being, so like that's going to obviously be two different price points, right?
Yeah. Usually the front end I kind of factor in like
Gotcha.
later.
Gotcha.
But it's all part of a contract,
Right.
especially if like they use that look science we develop to shoot their movie,
Right.
and then they want to bring it in for post. But yeah, it's varies too much to like be like really specific about it, but like, coloring is not, I'll say this. If you want to work with a professional colorist, paying them $250 to color a 3-minute music video with 127 shots is not going to equate very well.
Right.
And realistically, I've worked with every single budget you can imagine.
Right.
And sometimes the reality of being a freelance colorist is that you take projects because you need the money.
Right.
And you need something.
So ideally, ideally in perfect world, what is the full rate, starting?
Say for a music video, on my rate sheet, it's like $1,500. If it's a 2 to 3 day delivery time, something like that,
You're jacking up the price even
then
more.
yeah, it would go more north towards like 2,000.
Okay.
Commercial, and it really depends on the genre too, because like a commercial, it's similar to a music video, but there's a lot of work in a commercial as far as detailing.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too with music videos, and what I try to like, my price to edit a music video is going to be higher than my price to say edit a 30 or 60-second spot, simply because in a music video you're cutting, it's so many cuts that are happening in 60 seconds, as opposed to, you may live in a space of 10 to 15 cuts on a commercial, but the music, just depending upon the pace of the record, how fast you're cutting in it, there's so many cuts. It's so much more labor intensive as opposed to something narrative or a promo ad.
Yeah.
So what would be full price starting point for like a short film and then a feature?
Short film,
like say 10 to 15 minutes.
Short films, this is where it's interesting because short films are much more rooted in that look science. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, it's not so much details, but like, most important, you want to stay in a story when you're watching a short film or watch anything like that. That's going to go anywhere from like $1,200 to $1,500. Okay. So it's like sometimes it's less than the music video, but
it's less cuts. It's less
exactly, and it's less involved. It's all about my involvement, and also too, it like helps like when you have like when you are specific, and when the director's like, this is what I want. Right. It just makes the process so much more easy and like, well, not easy, but it gives me a clear direction. Yeah.
So what are some of your, because I know, and we have a lot of these discussions here at the studio about, like when we see jarring things in an edit or just, so what are some pet peeves a colorist has when they're watching something, whether it's on, like you just know whoever colored it wasn't,
Skin tones.
Skin tones?
Skin tones are like a dead giveaway sometimes. And then like, that's like the first one. I think that's a big one for everybody, is just like not like screwing up. Like, is it too much orange, especially like that's annoying when you're watching a film where it kind of takes you out of it, where it looks like somebody has what's it called? Jaundice? Or,
jaundice. It's jaundice. Yeah, jaundice, yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of annoying. And then...
now, are you also... and there's always this weird line between the coloring. And say, for example, are you... Because I know you're adjusting skin tones, but are you also adjusting skin blemishes, or is that VFX?
That has been an increasing demand for me that I am trying to get better at. That takes time.
Oh, it's very time intensive, yeah.
But when the it's like when the money and the time is there, great. But like there's some times where like things don't equate, that you really just have to like grind. Right. And I've been in that situation a lot lately, where like I feel like sometimes I'm grinding a little too much, but at the end of the day too, like, and this is what I face with every single project. this is my work.
Right.
You know, and the thing about being a colorist is usually it's one person.
Right.
So you have a direct impact on that final image. So like
Right.
there's times like with this, you know, all-nighter,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you have the choice, like, are you gonna like compromise your integrity, like your work, or are you gonna like, you know, you just have to keep going.
Yeah, no, I think the integrity piece is like something we talk about a lot with my team is if we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it regardless if it's we're taking a loss or if it's not the full value of what we would normally expect because, you know, it can take 10, 15 years to build a great reputation, but it takes that one project that goes south and then just to undo everything you've ever done.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
in
You never
15
know
years.
who's watching.
Yeah, and that's always the interesting piece of it is how that works, you know, with other creatives like that hire you to do something. Are you typically getting the full project like timeline, or are you getting a final? Like, how is it that your clients are giving you, and are you working from proxies?
Usually I'm working with everything's full res. Like we go all out so we can pull as much information as possible. XML or EDL is typically, well, actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I've started demanding like EDL, XML, both for every single project I do. If they some people are cutting on Resolve, which is really nice because you can just like export
Oh, that's
the
a
project.
that's an issue around here.
Yeah.
We have a
Oh, is there a
well, there's a battle.
yeah.
We have, well, people like the price point of Resolve as opposed to the subscription price of Premiere.
Yeah.
So, but I'm just like, Premiere's what I'm not going to learn another editing software.
I love Premiere, to be honest with you, for cutting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, yeah, but that's just me.
And that's a lot of people that cut on Premiere. It's, you know, the thing at the end of the day, I try to tell people is it's subjective, right?
God,
because
yeah.
there's no one's going to watch something and like, you know what? They cut that on Final Cut. I can tell.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
they
they
do this.
Yeah. So it's completely subjective to the person editing, and it's like people want to use the tools they're familiar with.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, dude, where can people find your stuff at?
IG is like the best place. At Luke Bryant Color. My website is launching July 4th.
Okay.
So that'll be good. That'll be a good place to get in contact with me and just see like everything I've been working on over the past few years as I've gone full time.
I definitely appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to share with us or let people know about projects or anything that you have coming up?
I'm actually
Got some top secret stuff you can't share yet.
well, I'm kind of getting back into directing a little bit. So
Interesting.
I've got a music video coming up. We're gonna be shooting in Jacksonville,
Awesome.
Florida. So I'm super excited about that. And I'll be doing post on that as well.
So do you edit as well?
No, I don't really cut. I honestly, that is such an art unto itself that like
It really is.
I love doing it. I think editing is so fun. But I think there are so much people who are better than me, and I just love it.
But they were all bad at one point. We were all bad editors at one point. Just like I think nobody wakes up and just clicks with editing.
Right.
But you know, I think just from shooting, like there's actually I worked with a DP recently who doesn't edit and does not even own a camera, and that was the most mind blowing thing to me.
I know some DPs who all they do is rent. Yeah.
It was I think because I come from like I come from the background like the run and gun one man band type thing. So I'm like, okay, well I got to shoot it, I got to light it, and then I got to edit it because I couldn't afford a team at the time, and I was doing video work at such a low rate, like it wouldn't make sense for me to hire anybody because I was just trying to build my catalog of work and then make a living at the same time. So it's the same filmmaker's journey at the beginning.
I feel you. When I was shooting, I did all of the color work, you know, and
But none of the editing.
none of the editing, you know.
That's so interesting.
And I didn't even. It's so funny. Like before, I sold my camera a year before I quit shooting, and for a year I was just the only thing I showed up to set with was my Saconic light meter.
Wow.
So I was just like, yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Atlanta Film Production Group. We had this amazing conversation with color extraordinaire Luke Bryant. Make sure to check him out at his website. And until next time, ciao.